A Toast to the Unexpected, a Purple Peacock Press prequel. Chapter 1. Andrea.
Open up already. I'm freezing.
I grinned, pulling the door open to let my friend Danielle inside. The brisk wave of cold air sent chills over my arms, but the sight of snow did wonders for my distracted mood. I loved winter. Something about the snow and ice just soothed that part of me that was constantly on the go and allowed me to slow down and breathe. Danielle stood there like some glamorous snow angel in her shimmery coat and impractical heels. She shook off the last-minute flurries that dusted her hair and frowned at me as if my mere appearance was the ultimate betrayal.
Is that what you're wearing? I thought this was a celebration.
I looked down at my slightly oversized sweater and faded, broken-in jeans. After waking up with a dozen creative ideas buzzing in my head, I'd spent the day at the piano, playing around with a few new song possibilities, but nothing seemed right. I didn't mind, though. Creativity was a muscle, and I worked with it enough to know that I probably just needed a day off to relax and recharge. I'd be back to writing a hit jingle in no time. Still, I hadn't thought to change my outfit when I'd finished. "What's wrong with what I'm wearing?" I asked. "And what are we celebrating?" "It's New Year's Eve drinks, Danielle, not exactly a party."
You look like you're heading to the grocery store, not out to ring in the new year with your best friends.
I rolled my eyes. You know I don't care about this stuff.
Right, but it's time to celebrate the chance to start over. New year, new you. Don't you want to do something different next year?
Of course I did. I wanted to become creative director for Folsom Sound, a promotion I'd been working toward for years. A little birdie told me that the position was likely to become available in the upcoming year, and I was going to prove that I deserved it. I've worked too hard to start over, but I am hoping for a major change this year, I finally admitted.
That's my girl,
Danielle said with a grin.
Now, I need to freshen up before we go anywhere.
Watching Danielle take off her coat, I silently admitted that maybe, just maybe, I had underdressed. She looked like a walking New Year's Eve ornament, all glitzy and dazzling, a stark contrast to the low-key picture I presented. Danielle, petite, with generous curves and a flair for reaching into fantasy and making it reality, had outdone herself. She wore a shimmery cocktail dress that caught the light with every movement, reflecting the glow of the twinkling strands draped around my apartment. Paired with her shimmering eye makeup and sparkly lip gloss, she practically radiated. Maybe it would be better to dress up, I considered, though the thought of tight sequin dresses or flashy accessories made me cringe. But then I saw Danielle's feet, and that was enough to snap me out of my doubts. The shoes were unapologetically gorgeous, yes, but stilettos were no match for New Year's Eve in Redford, where snow and ice coated every square inch of ground. Absolutely not. There's no way you're wearing stilettos with snow everywhere. If you don't freeze your toes off, you'll slip and break an ankle. I have some boots you can borrow. She hesitated for a beat, processing the suggestion of practical footwear, a foreign concept to her. I watched for the inevitable scrunch of her nose and the impending protest about fashion over function.
I'll make you a deal. Put on something more festive and I'll take the boots.
I narrowed my eyes. In all the years I'd known Danielle, she'd rarely ever given up an argument before it started without something else up her sleeve. "You're not going to argue about the boots?" She laughed, shrugging.
No point when you're right. Besides, it was a train wreck getting up the stairs. So, do we have a deal?
Deal. I'll be back in a minute.
Perfect. I'll just touch up my makeup and we'll go when you're ready.
I headed to my bedroom, already regretting the idea of changing out of my comfy clothes. But a deal was a deal, and I never reneged on a promise. Digging out a sweater dress and leggings that were almost as comfortable as my jeans, I changed my clothes. I didn't bother with makeup or my hair. I wasn't looking to impress anyone. Who had time for a relationship these days? Certainly not me. It took some rummaging, but eventually I found a pair of ankle boots with a chunky heel, just high enough to suit Danielle's outfit. They also had great traction on the soles, so she'd remain upright in the snow. The perfect compromise for Danielle. When I showed Danielle the boots, she grinned like a cat that had just caught sight of its favorite toy. Without missing a beat, she dug into her clutch, pulled out a fresh pair of boot socks, and slipped them on with practiced grace. Within seconds, the stilettos were ditched, and the boots hugged her feet snugly. I could practically see her wiggling her toes in delight, her entire body language shifting to a visible sense of comfort.
I gotta be honest,
she said, adjusting the boots around her calves.
My toes were freezing. These are definitely better.
I rolled my eyes. Well, they better make their way back into my closet. No thieving.
Me?
She asked with an innocent look, her dark brown eyes widening in a way that was anything but accidental. After all these years, I couldn't even pretend to be fooled. The expression was classic Danielle, a sweet angel act. She knew how to play with alarming effectiveness.
Never.
The window rattled as a gust of wind sent another flurry of snow swirling past. I tugged a wool scarf around my neck, wondering for a brief second if we should bother going out at all. The temperature was plummeting, and the last thing I wanted was to get stuck in the middle of Redford's New Year's Eve celebrations, with nothing but sidewalk salt and frostbitten fingers to show for it. But going out was tradition, and if Danielle could survive in a pair of borrowed boots, then I could probably survive a little snow and wind. I wasn't about to give Danielle the satisfaction of changing plans at the last minute. Let's get going, I said. We're already late. Danielle looked at the clock above the stove with a mischievous grin.
Oh, shoot, you're right. Sasha's not going to be happy.
Considering Danielle was often late, I doubted it, but I still laughed as we dragged our coats on. It was a little before 11 when we pulled up to Pembroke Bar, snagging a prime parking spot near the sidewalk.
I could have worn my heels after all,
Danielle said with a smirk. I didn't answer, just rolled my eyes at her and got out of the car. We'd been coming to Pembroke since we turned 21, as had every other local. The bar was a Redford staple, passed down from generation to generation since its inception. The current owner and main bartender, Dale, was a lifelong local, which gave the place an extra sense of security for us. Nothing would happen to anyone with him watching. The fact that he gave us access to the sound system was a nice bonus on karaoke nights. I rounded the car, letting Danielle twine our arms together the moment I got close enough. Holding onto each other, we rounded the large snow tufts at the edge of the sidewalk and made it to the front of the old brick building.
Ladies,
Nate, the bouncer, said, holding the door open for us. He had worked the door at Pembroke for as long as I could remember, and was as much a part of the place as the brick walls and horseshoe-shaped bar. Nate was sweet, easy on the eyes, and easily as old as my father. Knowing Nate was keeping watch was another reason we always felt so comfortable here. "Evening, Nate," I said, giving him a smile in return. "How's the family?" I knew his daughter had her hands full with her 3 kids, but also knew Nate was relishing every second of his status as grandpa.
"They're great. Baby Cece is already the center of her brother's worlds. She's going to have a pack of protectors for the rest of her life."
As if you'd let them act any other way,
Danielle teased.
"You're not wrong.
He winked and waved us in.
Out of the cold, the both of you. No need to start the new year sick."
We wished each other a happy new year and stepped past the threshold, unwinding our coats and scarves to leave on the coat rack. The space heater nearby would take care of any remaining snow or wetness before we were ready to leave. Warm in the bar air, we made our way through the throng of New Year's patrons to our usual table.
"You all are late. I'm assuming it's this one's fault,"
Sasha said, tilting her head toward Danielle. Her fingers twitched on the tabletop like she wanted to drum them on something, but held herself back. Her punctual nature made it hard for her to accept other people's tardiness. It was a testament to her job as a lawyer that she was able to keep her calm in situations that annoyed her.
I mean, only by a few minutes. Besides, it was a shoe emergency.
Danielle shook her feet at her and Willow, Sasha's younger sister. Sasha rolled her eyes but nodded us toward our seats. Willow turned toward the bar, caught Dale's eye, and gestured over at us with an enthusiastic point at Danielle and me. I knew this routine well.
"Dee,"
she mouthed, signaling our signature New Year's drinks. Dale, always quick to catch on, gave a broad grin before waving back at the 4 of us. With a nod of understanding, he began mixing the familiar concoctions we ordered every time we came in this time of year. I had no doubt that he'd have a festive fizz ready for me, a clever name Danielle came up with last New Year's for my tasty, non-alcoholic drink. Willow faced us again, taking a long sip of the cocktail already in front of her, with a soft sigh of relief. "Did you work today?" I asked her, noting that while she wasn't in scrubs, she did have the look that came from too many harried hours on her feet. She gave a rueful snort and rested her chin in her hand.
"When am I ever not working?"
Her voice had a wry twist to it, resignation mixed with pride. As a nurse, Willow spent most of her waking hours with her patients at Redford Hospital. Beyond that, she saved her free time for us and her nephew, Tyler, Sasha's son.
"How did I end up with 3 workaholic friends?"
Danielle asked, her playful grin lighting up her face.
"I should start a support group,"
she continued, gesturing grandly with her hands.
"Workaholics Anonymous? Anyone?"
I resent that.
Willow argued.
I just have long shifts. It's the nature of the job.
"Same,"
Sasha said with a graceful shrug. We all knew her exhaustion was less about work being a lot, and more to do with co-parenting her son with her ex on top of work.
"There's not enough hours in the day."
Danielle turned to me with an expectant look and a raised eyebrow. Her unspoken question hung in the air, and I couldn't help but grin at her persistence. I lifted my hands in a gesture of surrender. "You already know," I said with mock exasperation. "I'm working for that promotion, remember?"
Oh, please. Daddy would give it to you in a heartbeat if I asked him.
Danielle's voice was light. dismissing the entire matter with a wave of her hand. I want to earn it, Danielle, not be handed my ideal position because I'm friends with the owner's daughter. Danielle just waved my statement off like it didn't matter, and I tried not to get frustrated. I adored my friend, but she'd had her life handed to her. Her family was wealthy, and she'd always gotten whatever she wanted. It had left her a little spoiled and occasionally disconnected from the real world. But that was part of Danielle's charm.
"Evening, ladies,"
Dale said, breaking up the semi-tense moment and saving me from spending New Year's Eve trying to defend my career choice to Danielle.
"Happy New Year, ladies. What does this upcoming season have in store for you?"
Work, I said, as Willow and Sasha agreed, laughing when Danielle sighed dramatically at us. Dale smiled, tucking his drink tray under his arm so he could lean on our table.
"Oh, yeah? I haven't seen any of you with a companion in a while. Is love in the plans this year?"
The moment he said love, Danielle's eyes lit up. Our friend was a romantic at heart. She read romance novels and watched rom-coms religiously. Even when we were younger, love songs were all she listened to. She'd even declared Valentine's Day as her favorite holiday. There was no part of love that Danielle shied away from, often throwing herself into a relationship, even if it wasn't quite the right fit. I envied Danielle most days. Her ability to throw caution to the wind and just leap into things scared me, but fascinated me at the same time. Danielle loved the idea of love so much that she was willing to risk her heart over and over. The thought left me dizzy and a little queasy. I'd already learned that not everyone who said they loved you actually did, and I was less than ready to indulge in a repeat performance. I didn't have it in me to go through that again. Once was enough. And after watching Sasha experience something similar, I decided work was safer. Still, I couldn't help wondering what it would be like to have someone interested in my day, my work, my dreams. What would that even feel like? To have someone in my corner as more than a friend? I shook my head, taking a drink of my mocktail and groaning in delight. The tang of freshly squeezed lime and bright fizzy carbonation spread across my tongue and made me groan in delight. Dale had worked his magic again. I almost didn't miss the alcohol. "This is amazing," I said, lifting the glass. Dale inclined his head, but the glint of amusement in his eyes told me he knew I was avoiding the subject. When none of the others answered him, Dale laughed.
"Well, maybe this year's the one that'll change the lot of you, eh? It'd be nice to see you all happily settled."
With that, he winked and ambled off to the bar, as if he hadn't just dropped an emotional atomic bomb on our table.
Chapter 2. Sasha, love. That word echoed in my mind relentlessly, an insistent beat that rose above the noisy bar, refusing to be silenced. In the chaos of my life, love had become an impossibility, a wistful memory of a time when I thought things might work out differently. Between my caseload and raising Tyler, I barely had time to think about myself, much less starting anything new with someone else. How did people even attempt dating with a child in the picture? I'd been a single mom since Tyler's dad and I split up, and even though we split custody, I didn't know if I could balance a new relationship with everything else in my life. I already felt like I was making mistakes too often. Would one more responsibility be the final straw?
You know what? I think he's right. This is the year for love. I just know it,
Danielle said, downing her drink and motioning for another as I swallowed the sigh that threatened to slip through my lips. I forced a smile, the kind I'd perfected in the courtroom when things didn't go my way, and took another sip of my drink. The bubbles fizzed and danced, a sharp contrast to my thoughts. As much as I loved her, Danielle was a dreamer. She often thought of insane pacts or made off-the-wall plans that ended up leaving us in interesting positions. I had no doubt that she was already considering how to manufacture blind dates all over Redford for us, and while I knew how to have fun, admittedly less than I used to, I was still a realist. Time was a commodity that I couldn't replace, especially when I was spending it with my son. Still, it was almost impossible not to get sucked into her orbit when she was as excited as this. To her, falling in love was as easy as jumping, but to the rest of us, we'd been burned by love before. Well, Andrea and I had. Willow had been too busy with school and work to have more than casual boyfriends.
If we're going to talk about love, I'm going to need a drink.
Andrea's voice carried over the cheerful din, her tone half joking, half serious. She stood and gave us a quick, decisive smile before slipping away from the table. I watched her slide up to the bar and noted the tension in her shoulders as she leaned forward to talk animatedly with Dale. She was upset and trying to hide it with smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. She's still hurting, I realized, remembering how crushed she'd been when her last relationship imploded. Of course, she wasn't ready to let anyone in again. Andrea had wrapped herself in the safety blanket of work, immersing herself in her quest for a promotion to fend off the vulnerability that love demanded. Everyone healed from heartbreak at their own rate, and Andrea just hadn't had enough time yet. Knowing it would help her relax for the rest of the night, I pulled out my phone and added her and Danielle's addresses to our rideshare pickup in a few hours so she could enjoy herself or drown out the conversation without worrying about how they'd get home. When she got back with a fresh espresso martini in hand, I flashed the reservation at her and she smiled in appreciation.
You're a lifesaver.
I figure we'll all need to drown in drinks if Danielle gets on her love kick tonight. We both laughed under our breath, tipping our glasses in a silent toast to our sanity.
What are you two conspiring about over there?
Willow asked, her mouth tipping in a knowing smile.
Oh, just wondering how long it'll be until Danielle's regaling us with another tale from one of her romance novels.
Andrea joked.
I'm serious, y'all,
Danielle said, leaning over the table with excitement.
I think this could be the year we all find love for real. Isn't that amazing?
I'm too busy for love, I said automatically, softening my tone when her face fell. I don't even have time to meet with you three regularly, Danielle. I can't add in a new bow. Andrea nodded her agreement.
You know, I'm in the studio all the time. I mean, I was working earlier before you came over this evening, and it's a holiday.
We all turned to Willow, who just shrugged.
The only way I'll find love is if it falls through the ceiling tiles at the hospital while I'm on shift. I'm there too often to date anymore.
She finished her drink and set the glass to the side, tilting her head thoughtfully.
Oh, or maybe a vending machine. Do you think they make those?
A boyfriend vending machine? No, but they'd make a killing, I mused with a grin. I can see it now. Each boyfriend comes with a bow in their favorite color for you to wear in your hair. Seriously, you should get on it. Willow, sell the idea and retire from nursing early.
I like nursing,
Willow said.
It's more important than sitting around on my buckets of cash, but I wouldn't mind taking a few vacations. Maybe somewhere with surf, sand, and gorgeous bartenders.
Coconut drinks and bikinis all year round? Sign me up,
Andrea said. I could picture them both on the beach somewhere warm, drinks in hand, and relax for the first time in ages. Maybe we should all save up for a girls' trip sometime soon. I figured I could spare the time off in a year or so if I put the request in soon.
You're not taking this seriously,
Danielle huffed, her face pinched in annoyance. Andrea, Willow, and I shared a look over the table. Danielle's default setting when she felt unheard was to pout. Most of the time it was frustratingly adorable, and I had a feeling the drinks would either make it even cuter or just downright funny. When her lip jutted out and the corners drooped in a comically large frown, I realized drunk pouting was going to be the latter. We are, I said, forcing the threatening giggles down with a slight hiccup. Danielle glared, but she was too sweet for it to really hit. We're listening and we don't judge, but we don't agree. It's nothing personal. You know that, right?
But that doesn't make sense. You don't want to find love?
Danielle asked, her confusion genuine and almost heartbreaking. To her, wanting love was as natural as breathing, and I could see her trying to wrap her mind around the foreign idea of not wanting it at all. I looked at Willow and Andrea to find us all hesitating. How did you explain to someone so optimistic that love isn't always a fairy tale? How could I tell someone who loved love that it wasn't in the cards for everyone, or that sometimes, even when you found it, love hurt more than it healed, carving out pieces of your heart that you never really got back? I sighed. It's not that.
You're all scared it's going to backfire,
Danielle guessed, and I wasn't surprised when we all nodded. Her fingers tapped the tabletop while she thought, and the sound made my own fingers twitch. Table tapping was a habit I'd had to break before law school, but it was one urge that had never really gone away.
But what if it doesn't backfire? Seriously, you've all been single for so long. Don't you miss being with someone you trust? Don't you all want to fall in love again?
I opened my mouth to disagree because splitting up with my son's father had been awful. But even as I wanted to deny it, I wondered if she wasn't right. Maybe I did miss having someone to come home to. I thought about my last relationship. When things were good, they were really good. Passionate and loving, calm and peaceful. Compared to a house that was empty half the time with my son away, I could see now that I missed the easy, relaxed joy of having a partner to share my life with. I missed waking up to fresh coffee or having my car warmed up for me in the winter. I liked the idea of having someone there to cook dinner when I didn't want to and snuggle while we watched movies. I missed that deep, aching sort of love that we'd had before it all fell apart. I didn't want my ex back, far from it, but I wanted that a similarly quiet and fulfilling love. Maybe she's right, I thought, but do I have the time for it? At least that answer was simpler to figure out. Between work and Tyler's rotating custody schedule, I barely had the time to stop by the salon to get my hair done. Adding a relationship into my life was impossible, especially a new one that would require care and nurturing to grow into the type of love I desired. Still, the idea stuck with me more than it should have. I'm too busy. Besides, I don't date clients, and that's where I'd most likely find a partner, I said, not sure if I was trying to convince Danielle or myself now. It was a rule I'd made before I ever passed the bar exam, and one I intended to follow until I retired. Relationships with clients were ethical gray areas, and I didn't need the added mess in my life. Thankfully, I'd never even felt the urge to cross the line before, and I didn't see that changing.
So who do you want to date?
Danielle asked. I bit back the instinctual urge to remind her that I didn't want to date and thought about the question. Who would be a good match for me and the way my life was? Another lawyer, someone who will understand the demands of my job and time. A man who won't ask too much of me when I don't have the space to give it. Danielle didn't seem happy with my perfunctory answer, but nodded anyway. She turned to Andrea, who was grinning at something Willow whispered to her.
I know you want to find love too. You're just scared. Not everyone is like your ex, Drea.
Danielle, I warned, watching Andrea's face go from relaxed to shut down quickly, the old sadness of her ex choosing to leave her rippling over her face. Danielle realized her mistake and opened her mouth, likely to apologize, but Andrea spoke first.
I don't want love, but I wouldn't mind having a fling.
A fling?
Danielle asked. It wasn't that she wasn't used to a fling, but Andrea wasn't really the fling type.
Have you even had a fling before?
She wasn't the fling type before, I corrected myself. Things change when the people you loved disappointed you. I knew that from firsthand experience, and though she was more careful with her heart, Andrea loved a lot like Danielle did. They were both fierce and deep with their affection, and when that affection was taken advantage of or broken, they fell along with it. So even if the casual dating was a change of character for my friend, it was one I understood. Andrea shrugged.
No, but why shouldn't I? It's just something casual to fill the time when I'm not working. It could be fun.
She didn't seem convinced, but I didn't point that out. Andrea needed to find herself again after hiding for so long in the aftermath of her breakup. What better time to do that than in the new year?
Ooh, you could see another musician.
Willow's voice brought me back, her hand flapping in excitement. She leaned over the table to get closer to Andrea, her eyes bright with mischief.
You always have a bunch of fine ones coming into the studio.
Yes.
Andrea pointed her finger at Willow, light coming back into her features as if the sadness had never been there at all.
That's the spirit. Shared interests and all that.
Danielle held her hands up.
Oh, I don't think...
Now come on, Danielle. Even you have to admit that a musician-on-musician romance is the stuff of legend. Am I right, or am I right?
Danielle stared at her for a minute, obviously trying to see if she was serious. Eventually, she laughed and waved it off.
You're not wrong. I've definitely read a few rock star romances. Oh my God, let me tell you about the one I read last week.
While she told us all about the book of the week, I watched Andrea for another minute, making sure she was okay. She was a little stiff, her smile slightly forced, but after laughing at the escapades in Danielle's books for a while, she seemed to fall back into that relaxed vibe that we'd had before her ex was mentioned. Satisfied that my friend was okay, I turned to my sister, who was tapping her nails on the table absent-mindedly. What about you, Willow? What do you want this year?
Chapter 3. Willow. I want someone with no baggage, I said immediately. It wasn't even a question in my mind. I don't have time to unpack a man's dumpster of drama. I've dated enough liars, cowards, and cheaters and to know what I don't want. Andrea let out a groan.
Ugh. The trifecta. Redford is full of those.
Tell me about it. Where can a girl find a decent man in this town? Is there a mailing list I didn't sign up for? Danielle, you should have another musician bash and invite some doctors for me.
Not with your limited schedule,
Sasha cracked.
Whatever, sis, you should talk. We laughed and clinked our glasses. It was nice to see my sisters smile so freely again.
After the split from her ex, I wondered if she'd given up on being happy, if just being a great mom was enough for her. All I wanted was for her to be happy, so each time she laughed, it soothed a worry I tried to forget. Not that I'd ever admit it, but I worried just as much about her being single again as she did about me.
You know, you're right. I think it would be too much for you to be with someone who has a lot of emotional wounds. You're too empathetic. You'd want to fix them.
I startled, staring at her for a beat. She wasn't wrong. I just hadn't expected her to hit so close to home. Though I didn't often have the time to date, I'd found that the men I chose were often fixer-uppers. I had to put a lot of time and emotional energy into them in order to feel like I was settled and satisfied only for the relationship to end for one reason or another. It was draining, to say the least. Exactly, I said, snapping my fingers. That's why I'm going to focus on work this year. Maybe I'll try dating again next year if life settles down some more. Danielle raised an eyebrow at me over her glass.
It's only going to settle down if you want it to, Willow.
My gaze shifted from hers. She's not wrong.
She's right.
Andrea said with a grin.
Personally, I loved how busy my life is. No time for distractions. Just me, my job, and my family. It's perfect.
Seriously, you three think about work too much.
Hey, I don't think about work all the time. I'm just there too often. My defense was weak, but it made Andrea and the others laugh, so I didn't much care. I was happy to see Andrea's smile was easy and more relaxed now that we'd moved away from directly talking about the past. Her ex had done a number on her, and while I knew Danielle meant well, she could be a bit heavy-handed with her idea that Andrea needed to get back on the horse. She'd date again, I had no doubt, but it wouldn't be with just anyone. She needed to find someone who would treat her right. Someone who would always pick her. Until then, she was fine on her own, just like I was. At least, I convinced myself I was. We'd see if I still thought that when February rolled around and I was the only single nurse on the floor. Until then, I was going to enjoy a night out with the girls and not worry about relationships.
All right, fine.
Danielle said, sagging in her chair.
Enough about your current dating lives, or lack thereof. Who do you imagine as your ideal man, Willow?
What do you mean? I asked, sipping my drink. My head was starting to get pleasantly fuzzy with all the booze. Good friends, good booze, good atmosphere. It was a perfect New Year's Eve. Although, I had to admit, a kiss wouldn't be half bad.
I mean, describe them to us,
she said, sitting forward with a giddy grin. She had that glint in her eyes that she got after reading a good romance novel. The one that said, "I dream of happily ever afters every night." It was adorable on her.
What do they look like? Sound like? Act like? Are they a cat or dog person? Coffee or tea?
Oh, I said, sitting back to think. In all the years I'd been alive, I wasn't sure if I'd ever settled on an ideal partner. When I was little, I was in love with Prince Charming. I was positive that he'd come and sweep me off my feet and take me to his palace to be doted on and adored forever. As a teenager, I liked the idea of a bad boy with a heart of gold who could whisk me away from my problems. Now, I craved stability. I wanted someone who understood that my life was chaotic and didn't mind. Someone who understood me and the rigors of my job. Someone who would fight for me when I was all out of steam. But I didn't say that. I'm not sure, I hedged, sipping my glass.
I don't know about you, but tall, dark, and handsome sounds good to me,
Andrea said. She stared around the room wistfully.
Someone who is comfortable in themselves and what they want.
Sasha groaned.
Men like that are always broody.
They aren't broody. They're in touch with their feelings,
Danielle said with a little frown.
Broody,
Andrea and Sasha replied at the same time. I tried not to laugh. What about the golden retriever men, the ones who will do anything they can to make you happy? I said. I like the sound of that. Someone who would make my coffee in the morning and kiss me senseless when I got home.
Oh, yes. The ones that bring you flowers the color of your eyes or leave your favorite cookie on your desk during a tough week.
I like the guys who pay attention, who remembers everything you say, even when you think it's dumb,
Andrea said.
I like someone who can take charge without me having to ask,
Sasha confesses.
It'd be nice to not have to hold things down all the time. It gets exhausting.
As long as they make me smile, I don't care, I said. It was true. Every man I'd ever dated had been able to make me smile. It was the only real prerequisite. I couldn't be with someone who bored or irritated me. I wasn't built for the enemies to lovers storyline. I needed companionship and comfort all the way. As Sasha and Andrea dove farther into the topic of dream men, Danielle leaned over to whisper to me.
This year is going to be epic.
Every year is epic, Danielle. She tilted her head, her lips tipped in a grin.
Nope, there's something about this year that's special. I can feel it.
I pursed my lips. Danielle kept her head in the clouds. She continued.
It's like magic in the air, Will. I'm telling you, we're going to get everything we want, even love. It's right around the corner.
I didn't say anything back, but for the first time in years, I felt the tingle of potential run down my spine. I couldn't help feeling like she was right. Something about this year felt different, monumental. I didn't know why, but change and growth were on the horizon, whether we wanted them or not. I knew it as much as I knew my own name. What did that mean for me?
Let's get our last round of drinks in,
Andrea said.
Good idea. The countdown's going to start soon.
My sister replied, pulling out her phone to check the time. She held up her phone. 10 minutes to midnight. I'll go, I said, hopping down from my stool carefully. It never failed that no matter how much I drank, the booze hit me when I was on my feet again. I slipped through the crowd, dodging drunk partiers on my way to the bar. Leaning over, I yelled for Dale. Oi, what's a girl gotta do to inebriate her friends? I joked, grinning at his fake glare.
Body shots might be a good way to start. We've got some handsome men here tonight. You'll have your choice of the litter,
he shouted, throwing a wink my way. I threw my head back and laughed, pretending I couldn't feel heats flare on my cheeks. Of course, Dale noticed, and he grinned at me.
I'll get your refills in a second, Will.
I scoped out the room while I waited, tapping my fingers against the bar top. Even though body shots were a thing of the past for us, I realized Dale was right. There were plenty of handsome men in the bar, most with dates. They clung to each other with varying signs of comfort. Some looked like they weren't even official, shuffling uncomfortably next to each other, while others looked like they'd been married for 10 years. Either way, they were all wrapped up in their partners. It was beautiful to see. Could that be me next year? I wondered, immediately shaking my head at the thought. Pull it together, Willow. You don't have time to date anyone. You're too busy saving lives and being the best auntie ever. That's enough for now. Dale dropped 2 drinks off in front of me with soft clinks, disrupting my thoughts.
Take these. I'll grab the others and be right behind you.
I nodded, grabbing mine and Sasha's glasses before leading the way through the crowd. As it got closer to midnight, everyone was getting restless. People danced next to their tables to the playlist of the night, and the air thrummed with excitement and tension, the promise of a new day, a new chance, a new beginning. It felt so optimistic, it was almost hard not to get into the spirit as well. Despite my reservations, it might be nice to fall in love. Dale and I slipped through the bodies easily enough, and with another Happy New Year to us, he headed back to the bar for last call before the ball dropped. I handed out the drinks and found Danielle staring over the crowd with a wistful smile. Her eyes lingered on each happy couple with a quiet reverence that only true romantics had. She loved love in all its forms, even if it wasn't her own story. Looking at her, I wondered what Danielle was looking for. She had knowledge of what kind of men she wanted from the books she read. She knew what love would work for her and what wouldn't. But did she have words to explain it? Suddenly, I wanted to see with her eyes and feel with her heart. What kind of man would the romantic of our merry band of misfits want? What about you, Danielle? I asked, her attention snapping back to me at the sound of her name. What's your ideal man like?
Chapter 4. Danielle. What's your ideal man like? What did I want in my ideal man? There were so many things that I wanted. I didn't know if I could say them all. What kind of partner would suit me best? The kind who made me feel like I was living in a grand, sweeping romance of my own, that's what. I sighed, my eyes going unfocused as I dove headfirst into the daydreams I'd had since I was a child. I pictured myself at my wedding, staring up at a man who looked at me like I was the sun. I thought of birthdays and holidays passing with someone always at my side, rough weeks with surprise flower deliveries, and nights spent watching the rom-coms that made me happy. I craved the kind of romance where love notes peppered the pages of my calendar. I thought of that unshakable love that I'd read about in books, the kind that wrapped around you like a warm blanket and never let go. What did I want? I wanted it all. I want a lot of things, but mostly someone who loves dogs as much as I do.
Oh, no,
Andrea said with a mock glare.
you aren't getting away with that.
Willow laughed.
Andrea's right. You grilled us on our ideal men like it was your job. You've got to give us more than that.
Sasha pointed at me.
Spill it, Ms. I love everything about love.
I sighed dramatically, using the pause as an excuse to let my eyes scan the room. I needed a moment to think about what to say, how to phrase it so everyone knew exactly what I meant. As I looked over the crowd, I noticed the cute elderly couple snuggling in the corner. The man held his glass to his wife's lips, and I noticed the scratched ring on his hand. How long had he had it? How long had they been married for it to get that worn? How could I explain to my friends that that's what I wanted? I want the fairy tale kind of love that sweeps me off my feet, someone who is as devoted to me as I am to them, someone that I can count on. I want the kind of love that lasts until our very last breaths so we can grow old and fat together while watching our grandkids play in the yard. The kind that has a foundation built on the most unshakable faith in my partner.
You don't want anything too difficult at all, huh?
Sasha joked. Maybe she was right. Maybe I did want too much from love. But why wouldn't I? I wasn't interested in fake love or anything casual. I wanted the real thing to set my soul on fire. I shrugged, lifting my chin. If I've learned anything from my books, it's that I won't compromise on love. I deserve someone who will treat me the way I want and need to be treated, and I'm positive I'll find them eventually. Until then, I'm prepared to wait. I just hoped someday was soon. I had this feeling in my gut that the person I was looking for was close enough to touch, but I had no idea who it could be. When I thought about the people around me, none struck me as being options. I'll find out, though, and I'll get the love I wanted. If I had to wait a little longer for it, so be it. Our conversation was cut off as Dale whistled from behind the counter.
Countdown starts in 60 seconds.
Finally! I jumped off the stool, handing out the party poppers that Dale left on the table. Around us, the rest of the patrons did the same.
Cheers to us.
Andrea said, lifting her glass.
Now, let's leave last year behind us and move forward.
Hear, hear! The rest of us cheered, laughing as we took our last sip. As a unit, we turned toward the large TV mounted behind the bar where the New York City ball drop was playing. Happy tension wrapped around my chest, stalling my breath as I watched the timer tick down even more. I was ready for a new year and a fresh start. All my dreams were going to come true soon. I just knew it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. With each number we shouted, the excitement in the room wound higher. Easy grins and happy smiles were everywhere. Joy and laughter filled the space with just as much light as the Christmas bulbs that still hung haphazardly from the ceiling. New Year's Eve had its own kind of magic that held us in thrall. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The clock struck midnight and the room erupted in sound. Happy New Year! We all shouted, the bar dissolving into chaos. The music was near deafening as we celebrated. Strangers hugged strangers and people pulled the confetti and glitter poppers to kiss in the shower of colors. I watched as everyone around me cheered and welcomed another year. I looked around, taking in the sight of so many people dipping their partners for sweet moments in the crowd. I could practically see them commit the moment into memories. It was beautiful, but as much as I loved it, I couldn't help wondering what it would be like to get a real New Year's kiss again, what it would feel like to have one with someone I was in love with. Would it make a difference to how I celebrated? Who knows, but maybe you'll experience it next year, I told myself.
Come on then,
Andrea said, pulling us closer. I laughed at the tinsel and confetti sticking out of our hair. One by one, we dropped kisses to each other's cheeks, hugging and enjoying the mayhem around us. With the main celebrating done, the bar cleared out relatively quickly. Most people wanted to get to their warm houses and enjoy the rest of the evening with their loved ones. Not ready to leave yet, we hung around, dancing to the music whenever we could. In between songs, we stopped to talk to regulars we knew from our years here and people we grew up with until Dale shouted for last call. Sasha pulled out her phone.
Time to get out of here. Car will be here in 10 minutes or so.
What if we had a sleepover to ring in the new year the way we used to?
Willow said, eyes bright with joy.
Please, I don't want to go home yet, and we haven't had one in ages.
Memories flew through my brain of years of slumber parties, staying up too late laughing about this boy or that while we ate snacks until our stomachs hurt. As we got older, the only things that changed were the boys turning to men and the addition of booze at night and mimosas with brunch the next day. I was firmly of the mind that every woman should have girlfriend sleepovers. I'd found that nothing said self-care like cocktails and my best friends.
I could use a sleepover. My apartment's so empty all the time.
Andrea said. I'm in, I shouted, grinning at them. I'd already dropped my dog off at my parents' house in case I stayed out all night. No need for Cocoa Puff to be home alone while I partied. Still, I took out my phone and texted an update so they wouldn't worry about when I'd come over for pickup tomorrow.
If you're cool with it, we could use your place, Sasha, especially since Tyler's gone tonight. Plus, we've all got clothes stashed there anyway.
Sasha shrugged.
That works for me. Everyone grab your things and pay your tabs. I'll switch the drop-off for the car and we'll head out.
20 minutes later, after many goodbyes to the other patrons, we left the bar with stumbling feet and smiles wide enough to hurt. The four of us wrapped our arms around one another, pairing off to keep warm while we waited for our ride. I snuggled into Willow's side, half-heartedly listening to their conversation, happy that Andrea convinced me out of my heels and into boots. Nothing like frostbitten toes to start the new year. The thought almost made me laugh. When the car pulled up, I snagged the front seat while the others snuggled up on the bench behind me. The driver pulled away, and instead of joining the conversation again, I found myself staring up at the stars. There was something about the sight of shining stars in the night sky that made me feel small in the best of ways. Sometimes the world felt too big to find the people who filled your heart with joy, too big to find your soulmate, too big to succeed. Looking at the stars reminded me that there's beauty in such a wide universe, no matter how terrifying. There's always something wonderful to be found. After all, without the stars and the moon, the gigantic night sky would be never-ending blackness. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I gasped at the star falling through the sky. Make a wish, Danielle, I told myself. Glancing back at my friends who were singing loudly to the radio, the sisters of my heart, I had only one wish in mind. I wish for true love for each of us. I kept my eyes on the skies for the rest of the ride, hoping for another falling star, but finding none. All too soon, we pulled up to Sasha's house and piled out, thanking the driver loudly before they pulled out and left us alone. Sasha fumbled with the keys a little, the only thing betraying her as less than sober. Still, the cold helped seep some of the languid intoxication from our limbs, so by the time we were inside the warm foyer, I was more aware than I had been.
All right, everyone, get changed into your pajamas and meet me in the kitchen.
We separated long enough to change, and I was once again grateful to have a few outfits stashed at each of my friends' places. I rarely used them, but you never knew when you'd spill something on your shirt or need a place to crash last minute. As I was the last to change, I found the others leaning against the kitchen counter with something between them. I raised a surprised eyebrow. You worked fast.
I had high hopes for the evening, as you can see,
Sasha joked, pointing to the small vanilla cake and the bottle of wine open in front of them. I knew the bakery was the only one in town and laughed, moving close enough to get my own bite of dessert. Sasha must have been planning her own New Year's celebration after the bar. Good thing we crashed it. This is delicious, I groaned, taking another bite of the sponge cake.
I wouldn't want to celebrate with anyone but you three anyway. You know what? Let's cheers.
To what?
Andrea asked, sipping from the glass Sasha poured her before handing Willow and me ours.
Are we celebrating the cake?
Oh God, no, that's too pathetic.
Willow said with a snorted laugh. To another great New Year's? I suggested, sipping the wine. It was a perfect fit for the cake. This combo is delicious, by the way. Sasha tipped her glass in acknowledgement.
Thanks. And no, we need something better than just the holiday, something we can focus on this year. To more girl time. We need more nights like these.
So true.
Willow said, her eyes on the ceiling as she thought.
To achieving goals no matter how high.
Andrea matched our friend's grin with one of her own.
To proving how great we are to everyone who's ever doubted us.
When they all turned to me, I froze. There were too many things I wanted to manifest for the new year to pick just one. To success in our careers. To happiness and joy in our lives. To health for us and our families. To all of us finding the love we deserve. But none of those were right. I wanted something for all of us, something that would inspire us to move out of our comfort zones. When I couldn't think of it, I cleared my throat, lifted my glass with a smile. Instead of forcing an idea, I cleared my mind and said the first thing to come out of my mouth. To the unexpected. How apt! I chuckled to myself at the irony. Without hesitation, my best friends held up their glasses and repeated my words. May we all find hot aliens, I said, as a nod to the last sci-fi romance I'd read. Though Sasha looked at me strangely, we all clinked and dissolved into laughter. As we ate the rest of the cake, we pictured our lives in the upcoming seasons. Our scenarios got more insane the later it became, but it didn't matter. We rang in the new year the best we knew how, together. When the cake was gone and we were winding down for the night, the conversation shifted back to regular topics. While the others fell into talks about life and work, I just sat there and watched them. Sitting around the counter doing nothing special, it suddenly hit me that I was glad to have found them. Willow's kindness, Andrea's joy, Sasha's protectiveness, they all meant so much to me. Their warmth and love pushed me to be better, to reach for the stars, and make my dreams come true. On bad days, their support was the glue holding me together. On the good days, it buoyed me to keep going. I'd never realized how beyond grateful I was for their friendship. How lucky. May that luck continue for the rest of our lives. May we rise to the challenge of every unexpected thing that happens this year and each one after. Sitting in that kitchen, enjoying our time together, we had no idea just how unexpected the next year would really be. We hope you have enjoyed A Toast to the Unexpected, a Purple Peacock Press production.